Hello Napoleon, what and oppose? S the matter? You were looking a little bit sad. Please tell me what is bothering you.
I was just thinking about my defeat at Waterloo and the Congress of Vienna, the meeting of European leaders after my defeat. Do you have any idea what it is like to be defeated when you are the greatest general who ever lived?
Down and oppose. Look at it that way, Napoleon. Instead of seeing your defeat, you should look at how well France made out at the meeting of the Congress of Vienna.
What do you mean?
At the Congress of Vienna, France, which was represented by Prince Talleyrand, actually worked its way into something of a position of power by acting as the mediator between other European leaders.
Yes. But still, the giant French empire I built was dismantled. France lost territory, the monarchy was restored, and I, Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest general who ever lived, was exiled to St. Helena. How is that positive?
Well, let's look at what happened to Germany after World War I. Then I think you and oppose. LLC just how little you have to complain about Napoleon.
We shall see, Gandhi, we shall see. I cannot imagine any humiliation being worse than the one I suffered at the hands of Clemens von Metternich.
Oh, Napoleon. I know you took a major blow to your ego, but really it wasn't that bad.
Prove it, Gandhi, if you can.
Very well. After 4 years of bloody war and more than 9 million deaths, World War I finally came to an end on November 11th of 1918. The war ended in an armistice, or an agreement to stop fighting.
It did not end in surrender? Interesting. Go on.
By the time the war ended, Russia had already surrendered to Germany and was having a revolution. The Austro-Hungarian Empire had collapsed, and the Ottoman Empire was on the verge of collapse. Of the Central Powers, only Germany remained.
And yet they did not surrender? It sounds as if their generals were nearly as brave as me, Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest general who ever lived.
I hope you down and oppose. Do you mind if I choose not to glorify the generals who sent millions of soldiers knowingly to their deaths on the fronts? Anyway, you were right. The Germans did not see the armistice as a surrender, even though they were the last of the Central Powers left standing against Britain, France, Italy, the United States and the other allied nations.
What? Were they crazy?
Crazy? No. Just hopeful. When the United States entered World War I, American President Woodrow Wilson began talking about his plans to create a lasting peace. He outlined these plans in the 14 points. Because the 14-point scales for peace without victory, Germany thought it had nothing to lose. Boy, were they wrong.
In what way could the things Germany endured be worse than what I went through?
Well, Napoleon, the thing is, it isn't all about you.
Not all about me? Sacre bleu.
That and oppose. S right. You talk about your punishment. But look at it this way. France was not punished. Sure, they had a king put back on the throne, making their government more conservative than it was under you, but the nation as a whole was not humiliated.
Do you actually mean to tell me that following the end of World War I, the leaders of the victorious Allies, the so-called Big Four, actually set out to humiliate Germany as a nation? They thought this would create a lasting peace.
Well, not all of them. Woodrow Wilson really believed his 14 points would catch on and that the leaders of Europe would be able to create a lasting peace. Sure, they still would have had to deal with the whole issue of national self-determination and the ownership of colonies, but that is for a different debate. Wilson wanted to see peace without victory, which would ensure that no one would have to bear the brunt of the blame or be responsible for paying for the war damages.
This plan actually makes quite a bit of sense. While I, Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest general who ever lived, would be reluctant to reduce the size of my army. As Wilson's plan suggested, I can see where trying to create a new balance of power would be useful. In fact, after my exile. The Congress of Vienna did just that, and the peace they established lasted for close to 100 years. Why didn't the Allies adopt Wilson's 14 points?
The Allies rejected most of the 14 points because each of the other 3 of the Big Four nations had ulterior motives.
Oh, I am so totally shocked by that. What were they hoping to get out of the Paris Peace Conference?
Italy wanted some of Germany and opposed as colonies in Africa, as well as some land in the Alps that they referred to as Italia Irredenta, or Italy Unredeemed. In a secret treaty made during the war, Britain promised that land to Italy if the Italians helped defeat the Central Powers.
That sounds reasonable, though I can see where Germany would need to lose the war for Italy to get some of its colonies.
Yes, and it does not end there. The British were also hoping to get some German colonies in Africa so they can consolidate their empire there. In addition, David Lloyd George also hoped to secure some reparation money from Germany to bring home to Britain as a way of securing more votes in the future. To do this, Britain needed Germany to accept full blame for the war.
Those shifty politicians. That is exactly why I tried to weaken Britain with the continental system so many years ago.
Well, before you condemn the British, you should hear what the French attempted.
Surely the French would not bring dishonor to the name Napoleon Bonaparte by trying something underhanded.
They wanted revenge. George Clemenceau wanted Germany to accept full blame for the war too. He hoped to gain control of Alsace-Lorraine once again, greatly reduce the size of Germany and oppose military, create a demilitarized zone on Germany and oppose western border, claim control of Germany and oppose colonies, and collect massive reparations. France was angry and in rough shape after the war, and her people wanted revenge.
But surely a compromise must have been met. Didn't oppose Germany have anyone like Prince Talleyrand to represent them during the Paris Peace Conference? Why didn't the Weimar Republic's representatives help broker a deal between the Allies to strengthen Germany's position during negotiations in the same way Talleyrand did for France during the Congress of Vienna?
Sadly, the German delegates were never given the opportunity to do this. They were excluded from the negotiations and forced to sign the treaty. And the treaty was a bad one.
How bad was it?
It was so bad that the American government failed to ratify it.
What made it so bad?
It was terrible. Germany had to accept full blame for the war. They lost their overseas colonies, lost territory in Europe, and had to reduce the size of their military. France occupied the demilitarized zone and extracted huge amounts of coal from German lands. Finally, Germany was forced to pay over $40 billion in reparations to the Allies.
Why didn't oppose the German delegates just refuse to sign the damn peace treaty? I would have.
If they did not sign the treaty, fighting would have started once more. Because the leaders of the German Weimar Republic were democratically elected, they feared what another war would do to their jobs.
Well then, I assume the German people were not exactly thrilled with this peace plan. How could they be?
No, they were not. The terms of the Treaty of Versailles increased the suffering of the German people tremendously.
You know what the Germans sound like they need? A smart, charismatic leader with bold ideas and good military skills to take control of their government. Someone like me.
Oh, Napoleon. Be careful what you wish for.
What exactly is it supposed to mean?
Watch and learn, my friend. Watch and learn.